Cue music.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the SE Journey, where we like to bring on guests from the sales engineering field to talk about their journeys, how they discovered the sales engineering or pre-sales profession, why, how their path got to this point and how they became this type of professional.
Should I be taking notes? Is there going to be a test later?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
And why it's the right type of career path for them and why it is for many of us and maybe for you as well. So my name is Chris Sprague, and with me, as always, my co-host Zane Allen.
And I'm Zane Allen, and I love how you're staring at the mic, just like you're talking at it. But as we are, you notice, if you're watching the video, not sure anybody is, we are live, first time ever.
Yeah.
In person. I mean, we're always in person, but usually in separate houses. And we're live on a, should we say, an undisclosed location? We're not going to tell us.
I don't think you're
where
really
we are.
live. I mean, you're still going to record it.
That's true.
You're
That's
listening.
true.
You're listening to this now, not live. We're live,
We're live.
and that's the magic of tape.
Every day of my life. That's true. This could be taped in the future and the past. But we are all in person in the same room. First time ever. Really excited about it. It's actually been a week of that. The three of us been together kind of visiting people in person and out in the field,
Yeah, I'm sick
in the
of y'all.
office. So
Sick of y'all, man.
yeah, so much that
We
we're
should have
ready.
this on Monday, not Friday.
Yeah, that's right. Now we're gonna hurry up and get this done and roll out of here. But that's right. Yeah, so SE Journey, and really excited to do that. And we are joined, you probably heard the voice over there, by one of our good colleagues and friends that we all tend to work at the same place. I guess it's kind of our theme. But JD Wallace joins us this time.
What's up?
Finally got the JD Wallace to join our podcast.
You know what? I'm glad you said D because there's multiple JDs, and it
There's
gets very confusing. And so, appreciate that shout out.
yeah, another friend calling us. That's awesome.
Good to see you, buddy.
Mute your phone, buddy. Come on.
It is muted.
Let's
That was
approach this with a little bit of professionalism.
That was vibration.
This is like episode 6? Like
Yeah.
I think you'd have this figured out by now.
Wow, good call. You are, yeah.
Wow,
You
episode
know,
6,
we
except
are
for that one
episode
we don't
6.
talk about.
There's a couple hidden
Bruno
episodes.
episode.
The
Bruno episodes.
long time listener, first time talker.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
It's great
And
to
in
have you.
person.
It's great to be here on this nice, comfortable couch with you.
Now you're really big in the social media, so we figure after this episode is when we blow up. So that's when Chris and I literally have to nail it down and dedicate ourselves to
What
getting other guests.
Is that
what
why
is
you're
what is your idea of big in social media? Because I have like 1,000 followers, which
I don't know. I walked to a conference with
it's
you, and
not a
people say,
lot.
"I saw you on Twitter." And when they can quote the direct tweet that they thought was the funniest, that's good enough.
Yeah,
for us,
most
right?
people gained or lost more followers than you had when Elon bought Twitter. So yeah, okay. Perspective.
I guess so.
Just kidding.
What's up?
All right, so yeah, we're at SE Journey, as Chris said, where we find out how people get into this journey. And
I'm really nervous right now. You know why?
what?
It's been a while since you guys had an episode, and I'm trying to remember. I feel like at the end of the episode, there's some like question you're going to ask me,
Yeah.
and I know that's coming,
Yeah,
but
trying to get it out of the way.
I've
or-
completely forgotten what it
Oh,
is.
that's even better.
So is Zane, so it'll be pretty random probably.
Yes. Yeah. I'm gonna figure it out as we go along here.
Yeah.
We used to ask two, right? We used to give you a good one and a way out.
Okay.
Hopefully you don't take the way out, but
Let's see.
um,
See how I'm feeling.
Well, that's a great point. We used to start off asking like what kind of gear you use,
Yep.
and technology and stuff because we were all at home in our own home offices.
we were
But now
changing it every week. It seemed
we're in a
like.
room together, so
So we
Can
are.
you tell me what gear am I using today?
We really want to talk about the setup in this room. So we're in a room that's full of AV equipment, yet where you have cables drug across the floor here because we couldn't get it to work with our system. But it's the same camera I use, so we already have that out of the way.
I like the light. It makes me feel like I'm in a makeup commercial.
Yeah, no, it's a ring light. It's really helping from up there too. Got a message over there, Chris, and this nice little portable USB mic that's only been used once for for internal presentation I did for my company at Pure. So we'll see how it works in a room full of people. But normally you got a pretty good setup at home, JD. So you could set up, you do presentations and things. What are you using in the home studio?
The thing you got to realize though is, I do collect a lot of different hobbies and nerd out about a lot of stuff. One of those things is not like AV tech though. I've never really gotten into AV tech, and so the purchase decisions I've made during the pandemic to do all of the copious amounts of Zoom calls that we do, 100% based on how cool something looks in my office. So I don't know if it sounds good. Let's see. Is this? Can I mention brand names, or is it like no product placement? We got to make sure you've got a.
I think I just said Rode mic, right? Or Rode. I'm not sure it's Rode mic. I'll start up.
I don't know that we'd get sued or anything. I feel like it's just free marketing.
Well, you wait till the end of the podcast, and maybe they'll sue us.
Yeah, knock on.
If they sue us, we'd be lucky, right? I mean, somebody's listening.
I did do a lot of upgrades during the pandemic, though. I got a Yeti Blue X, I think, mic. The big arm, so it comes down and dangles in my view of my camera, so that I feel really important.
Yeah.
So I got that, and that's cool. The best thing about that mic though is it comes with some software that lets you make it sound like you're broadcasting in an old timey radio. So that's fun.
Oh, cool.
So I got one of those. I did a lot of lighting. Actually, my setup is more about the stuff I have behind me. I would, like many people, I was doing virtual backgrounds for a long time, and I hate them. So eventually I was like, whatever, I'll just set up my office in a way that I might want to share with the world. So I got a bunch of shelving units. Thank you, IKEA. And
shout out IKEA.
And I just put various things about, the nerdiness that is me, kind of back there. I got some company stuff. I got lots of logos for, I think, Pure Storage is where I work. I think y'all know that.
Everybody knows.
So I got a bunch of cool logo stuff back there. I did this really cool thing where I've got these LED panels that kind of flash different colors.
Just continued LED panels too, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's no copying me there.
Yeah.
And I got Lego. I got a bunch of Lego. I've got it's harder to see, but I've got a section of books on fermenting things. Mostly beer. I guess a little sake book in there too.
A little variety.
Yeah. I have, and this is one of my prized possessions, I have a vintage from the 1980s, not one of these remakes that are like too super tiny, but I have one of the original 1980s Illuma Storms. You know what this is?
No.
This is this ball, and the safety regulations weren't the same in the 80s. So I'm pretty sure I'm decreasing my lifespan every time I turn this thing on. But I've got this glass ball that essentially there's a stick that comes up out of the center and you turn it on. Sharper image kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Mine came from Radio Shack. Radio Shack was big back in.
Used to hang out the sharper image because it was in the mall.
You turn this thing on, it makes a weird noise. Yeah. Things smell like ozone, and mine is actually really cool because it's you can put it where it's sound sensitive, and so with music when you're talking. So that sits right next to my wireless access point in my office, which I feel like is probably a terrible decision, but
different things. I've actually never noticed that. I've seen your background a lot, but maybe I'm not staring beyond it.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to edit in the background here in the video here, just to kind of bring it in.
Splash it up.
That picture of you where you're.
That's a little incentive to go watch this on YouTube.
That's right. We're in a room. We're filming this as one big room, so we're hoping maybe this will be the first video we really promote. We've actually videoed every one of these podcasts, even in different houses. We just don't share it, I think. Lots of stuff we don't share. We're getting there.
I don't know if that's it. Oh, I got a big monitor because
you do.
I used to have dual monitors, and that was cool.
Yeah.
But it's messy. It takes up a lot of desk space.
Yeah.
So
I
just replaced it with one of those giant, I don't even know what I mean, one of those giant curve monitors where essentially it's broken into like 3 pieces and I can put all kinds of stuff up. 10 out of 10, would recommend.
Would recommend. Okay.
And you have a pretty good home lab too.
I got a dope home lab.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've got, oh gosh, here we go with dropping brand names again. I've got three Intel Nooks.
Yeah.
I've got a Raspberry Pi. I don't really use that for much. I got it so it's a VMware home lab. So when ESX came out on ARM, I got the Pi to play around with that. I built a couple VMs, whatever, don't do anything with it. But no, I got the three Intel NUCs all running ESX. I get my licenses through VMUG Advantage. Again, 10 out of 10 would recommend.
VMUG Advantage.
VMUG Advantage.
Yep.
You get cool licenses and stuff.
Absolutely. And there's a discount code out there now. Contact me if you want to hear it.
Look at this plug.
Wow. Get your 10% off. Let me know.
The Microsoft licenses are harder because I still run a lot of Windows VMs and I want to keep it all legal. And so I actually pay for a Visual Studio Pro account, which is ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
And that hurts my heart a little bit. But I do that. That's how I get my Windows
Just do it once a year and then you forget about it until.
I got a blog post. I don't know. Can you under the video put a link to?
I got a blog post. This will all be in the show notes afterwards. There you go. I just set a goal for us, a task.
I even priced it all out.
Good call.
Then I've got a.
That's right. I think mine has I have a short. No, my lab's more about what I built on my lab. That's a good blog post there. Share what we're using at home.
But you bring up a good point though. So I got this home lab and it's cool and it's great that I've got the ability to build that. I would say you haven't asked yet, but recommendations. If you're into tech, you're trying to further your tech career, get hands on, man. And if that means building a home lab, build a home lab. If that means finding online resources, cloud resources, whatever. I mean, that's the number one thing to kind of further your career is.
The day I started paying for AWS and Azure is the day I started really saying, it's the cost of being in this industry.
Yeah.
Get your hands on it. If you didn't get it from your career before, then you got to extend it. You got to get the resources.
Yeah.
Make friends. Maybe you'll get some discounts. But
I don't blog a lot, but most of the blogs that I've written have been informed by something I built in my lab.
Yep. I agree. Hands on. Not Chris though. He's just book smart.
Yeah. I just like reading books.
Yeah. That's not true.
That's not true. JD's very, very right. You get hands on, get into the tech, figure it out. There's no better way to learn it, in my opinion.
I appreciate your validation.
Yeah.
Been validated. All right.
Well, awesome.
So I think, so let's get into, so we got that out of the way. Thanks for the share. No one's ever really given us their branding. That's actually something I keep bringing up on all these podcasts. I'd like to really get into branding. You don't have to do that today. Maybe that's a later episode. You want to come back and meet us again, kind of, how you built your brand. And, you've kind of already gone into it, I think, with
let's see how this one goes for
background part. Yeah, no, I get it. We'll see the numbers. You report back to me, and we'll see if I'll renew. And you have actually been in the SE game longer than Chris and I. You've had a few more careers.
So I can tell you exactly how long. Hold on.
But why don't you let everybody know? I kind of like to walk it backwards, but you can tell the story as you want. But why don't you let everybody know what you're doing today and kind of what that is, and then maybe we can get into how you got there.
I work at Pure. You know that because
Pure Storage.
You guys both do too. So this podcast is a little nepotistic from that perspective, I guess.
It's kind of alluded to that in the beginning. We bring our friends on, so
yeah. I work at Pure. I'm on your team very directly, Zane. So all the stories you've told about what you do, I do that same thing.
That's true.
So
have we done that yet?
That was the easiest question you ever answered.
I'm not sure that we've gone into that, but yeah. So we're principal technologists now, right? Yeah. But it's kind of a different role than an SE, but not a different role. Maybe it's the best part of the SEs, in our opinion. But I
kind of talk about it this way. So I think there's different. One of the cool things about our team is that there's a lot of different personalities.
Yep.
There's a lot of different approaches to the way we try to add value. None of them are wrong, but some of them are very different.
Yep.
So my perspective might be a little bit different if you've worked with somebody like, Kyle Keller, Andrew Miller, some of the other folks on our team. They might have a different perspective. But my perspective is that it's kind of a mix of three different things. It's about a third solution architect, right? So a lot of organizations, we have SAs who are kind of exactly.
Like
so SEs who maybe focus on a particular subspecialty or who have some kind of extra level of experience or what have you. And I feel like this job is like a third that, coming into accounts, opportunities, and bringing some additional technical value to that conversation. So it's a third that. It's a third product or project management. And maybe not necessarily direct PM, more like PM liaison, right? So project managers are out doing their job, helping our products be better. And we're in the field a lot more often than they are. And so we interface a lot with that team to give them the voice of the field. And the other way around to, disseminate information about what they're working on to the field. And so making sure that there's a really robust two-way communication.
Field perspective to PM and PM perspective, kind of what they're trying to get done, that middle glue.
So I think it's a good
Did you want the third one, or you're going to interrupt me now?
No, yeah. Go ahead, please.
I did say three, right? I did say three.
If I don't say the third one, I'll forget.
I'm not really listening to you.
We'll get to the end of the podcast.
You have stopped talking. I will stop now. Anyway.
Well, and then the third one is kind of tech evangelist, right? It's doing things like we're doing right now. This is a little more, my personal story, I think, as opposed to my pure story, but it's a third that, telling stories in a very public way, going to conferences and speaking, developing content, being on podcasts, representing the brand. So you kind of mix those three things together and shake it up. And I think that's my vision of what a principal technologist step here is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So that more of less of a individual contributor, but kind of a voice of the individual contributors across the board. Yeah.
Chris had a question.
Yeah, no, sorry. We're all friends here, if you can't tell. I might have got jumped there. I was going to say...
This is how our regular meetups go.
Because what you were explaining there, what I thought it was a good time to reiterate. We call this the SE journey, as in sales engineer. Right? But I think maybe we said this on the first episode as well. I wanted to reiterate. We said sales engineer could take many titles, right? Systems engineer, solutions architect. I think the real key glue here is we're all pre-sales in some fashion. Yeah. Whether we've gone way up the ladder or we're just at the beginning of our careers.
Don't call me when it breaks.
Don't call me when it breaks, he says. So it's all pre-sales, right?
So how this works.
So that's kind of just what I wanted to say. While our titles aren't sales engineer anymore, we're still on that side of the fence.
Right? But very much part of a sales engineering organization.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, part of the organization. Yep. Even Chris here, his architect title.
I'm lucky to do that.
But actually, that's a new development. I don't think we've talked about this podcast. Chris, I think we've mentioned you're an FSA before, Field Solutions Architect. If we haven't, Chris is a Field Solutions Architect. We're now on the same team. So we're talk even more nowadays. So that's kind of a great thing. Anyway, that's more of an internal thing, but kind of more of an extension of the same team. It's kind of doing the same thing from different angles, I guess, right? You have a different focus than us. So that's been pretty cool. Synergy, right? Because we can't all be everywhere at once, or can we? But before that, JD, I think you told me the three things, so we're good. Questions out of the way. All right, I'm going to move on. You were an individual contributor, am I wrong?
I'm still an individual contributor. I don't have direct managers, or I don't manage people. Reports. Still a nice.
Oh, that's true. I guess I think of but more of a customer-facing. Territory individual.
Direct account ownership.
There we go. We'll go with that term. That is a better term. Thank you. You got the term. So
prior to this, I was a system engineer, sales engineer. There's a lot of different terms that mean kind of roughly the same thing for a variety of companies. Veeam, most recently, before coming to Pure, which was cool because that was a little bit of a shift for me, right? I started my career very storage centric. And built my career that way. And the earliest opportunities that I had as a sales engineer were all very storage hardware focused. And Veeam was a little bit of a shift. It was a fun one, though, because Veeam will tell you, they're the number one storage provider in the world, right? Okay, you got to read into that. It's because of how much data, how much Veeam data they store and manage. And that's cool. So, but the point is that they're very closely aligned with storage. There's it's protecting data, and that's really what we talk about in the storage community is data services, data protection. All the different things that you need to do.
The stack.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when we were at Veeam, we never didn't sell something that included storage.
Yeah,
it was part of the solution for sure.
Yeah, so that was, it was a way that I kind of rounded my experience and my career a little bit. So I was really glad to have that opportunity. Yeah, and then before that, a couple of storage startups. One of them got acquired by Western Digital, one of the largest storage manufacturers in the world. That was a fun ride.
Which again got acquired by somebody else.
Yeah,
not Western Digital, but yeah, it's a brand. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So storage through SE. Well, maybe each one just kind of leveling up it as an SE as you went up, or maybe taking on greater accounts, or any growth there.
So I guess the core of your question is, how and why did I transition between each job? Is that
I always figured a transition. Yeah. Why did you transition? That's a good point. If it's just because you didn't like the company, I guess then we'll end the conversation. But
no, so
always looking for something more. How you got to Veeam.
Well, let me answer your question by not answering it for a minute and taking a step back. So one of the things that I really believe, and when I'm mentoring others, I tell them is have a plan. Know what you want, think about that plan, but don't let that plan define your career. What I mean is
like that.
Always be open to opportunities that present themselves. If an opportunity presents itself that doesn't fit in with your plan, but is something you're interested in doing, maybe even something you're a little scared to do, and something that you think could provide value, adjust your plan so that you can say yes to that opportunity. And I think if you look over the different shifts I've had in my career, there's been a lot of that. Now, maybe you're kind of working me backwards, but it's going to be easier for me to tell the story starting at the beginning.
It's your story.
I'll go all the way back to college. So I started at the University of Arkansas as a chemical engineer.
Yeah.
Because I love chemistry. I thought that was a lot of fun.
Coca-Cola, it's Coke Zero now, so.
There you go. Thought that was a lot of fun, and it was. But, I also had to pay the bills. I was going down, I remember, I was freshman year. I was going down to do my laundry in the laundry at the residence hall. And there's a sign on the door said, I didn't have a job at the time. Sign on the door said, good with computers, need money. And we're like, well, yeah, both of those things. So I grabbed one of the numbers and I made a phone call, and I ended up, so the housing department at the University of Arkansas it was big enough that it had its own IT department, mainly because it had computer labs in every residence hall. This was still earlier days before everyone had a computer. We were kind of in that transition.
Yeah.
And actually, while I
a few people had computers.
While I was at the university, we kind of transitioned away from the labs because we got to the point where more and more people had their own computers. But we were still kind of in that transition period, and so managing our own computers had a very, very small. I even hesitate to use the term data center because it was like one rack, but had a data center, eventually had in-room networking, so Ethernet through all the residence halls and all the management that came along with that. So there was enough of computer and IT infrastructure that housing department had its own kind of IT, and it was in a really, I don't know how much of this I'm getting kind of into the history of the University of Arkansas now, but it was there were a lot of transitions happening. I already mentioned the transitions from students not bringing computers to students bringing computers. It was also a transition from a leadership perspective. So the director of IT at housing, brand new, just starting in that role, had history working for the department, but brand new in that role, and really wanted to build out that organization. And I guess where I'm kind of going with all this was, as I took this job starting as a lab manager.
Yeah.
Really, in between classes, I would go to the labs and I would fix busted lab computers.
Yeah.
That was it, right?
Pull cables or whatever.
Exactly.
Plug things in, unplug things. Yeah.
What that opportunity presented to me was I was essentially the first new hire for this new director of IT.
All right.
And I had the opportunity to essentially build the program with him.
Yeah.
And that opportunity really made me realize that I wanted to shift my plans. I was going to be a chemical engineer.
Yeah.
Really decided computers wasn't just a job. It was something I was really passionate about. and ultimately shifted my degree. Now I graduated computer science degree.
Yeah.
And, really kind of kickstarted my career, as a student employee in the housing department. Doing a lot of cool stuff. It evolved. I mean, we can get to this, but it evolved from
It
it evolved from lab management to eventually by the time I graduated, I was a manager. I had 2 different teams that reported to me. I had one team that was other student staff that managed the residents' computer labs.
Yeah.
We had started to build out automation to better manage those, so it wasn't just like when I started going around and manually re-imaging
put that
computers.
disk in.
We put some automation in,
Yeah.
and then I had another team that was managing all of the in-room network access, because we had. I mean, again, this was still earlier days of network connectivity. Some people were still using dial-up. We had all these students bringing computers to school, plugging them into the network port in their residence hall, and nothing worked. And okay, we've got to send somebody out to go help them get that online. And so it was a service that we provided.
Wow.
Yeah, so
well before Wi-Fi was so prevalent, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to hone in on something before I ask a question. I don't know if you're ready. I don't want to throw you off, but you said something interesting earlier.
Uh-oh.
And maybe this was just your recommendation to the audience, but I identify with this. Maybe even something that scares you should turn your job. So any of that, as you kind of went up, was it happening so fast, or did each opportunity kind of make you take pause and that's why you took it? I'm just curious, exploring that a little bit because I identify with that, right? If it does scare you, it might be the best thing that you should go do, right? It's going to change you.
Yes. However, I think to illustrate the point, to answer your question better, I think it is important to fast forward just a little bit. There were 2 things I did early in my career, leading into being a sales engineer, that scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
The first one was, so I'm at the university now. I met my wife there. We got married, and
so that was the first one. I'm just kidding.
Total confidence. Best decision I ever made in my whole life.
Nice. You did that one well.
She's amazing. But we decided that we didn't want to live in Arkansas anymore. We wanted to move, and narrowed it down to Seattle. So we both quit our jobs and got a 6-month lease on an apartment, sight unseen.
Yeah.
Loaded up the car.
Just tied everything to the roof, everything you owned, and said, "Let's go."
And neither of us had a job.
Wow.
Now this was pre the big economic downturn of 2008.
8. Yeah.
It was before that. I think it would have been a lot harder to do that kind of post that period. But so and I was terrified. I didn't have a job. I had a very expensive apartment in Seattle because they're all expensive.
Yeah. Meaning an apartment in Seattle. Got it.
Yeah. And
you were in Seattle too, right? I mean, you were in the city. So
yeah. So I remember applying somehow, and maybe it's just because to someone who grew up in Arkansas, when you think about tech in Seattle at the time, the number one name that came to mind was Microsoft.
Yeah.
Right? And so it was probably driven mostly by that kind of...
That name you knew.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I applied at a ton of different places, but I specifically honed in on Microsoft, and I had a little bit of a strategy. I was literally applying for dozens of jobs across the company. I would basically anything that matched kind of the system engineer persona. Yeah. And I basically kind of broke it into 2 categories. I can't write a custom resume and cover letter for every single one of these. There's just too many. Yeah. So I kind of have my tier 1 and my tier 2. Yeah. My tier 2 jobs, I just kind of generic application. My tier 1, the one that I
custom those.
Realized like, oh man, this was really choice.
Yeah. Change the words to match.
Yeah, I kind of tuned it a little bit for the job opening, and
it's a good tip, by the way, for those listening.
Yeah, and I wish I knew. I wish I had a record of exactly how many jobs I applied for at Microsoft. I bet it was over 100. But eventually, after 3 months, I landed a full-time gig at Microsoft. This was not pre-sales yet. This was still internal
IT stuff, right?
Yeah, I was a lab guy at Microsoft, which was a ton of fun.
So you're doing the residence lab. It's like you're right back to kind of I'm sure it's a different level, but kind of starting.
I got a. It's not really a joke, but I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? One of the very first things that I was tasked with as a brand new sysadmin on this team at Microsoft.
What was it? What?
Backups.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're bringing it back.
Yeah, we could have all done that.
I go back through my career, and I finally did that when I was leaving Veeam. I'm like, every job I was the backup guy, so that's what the new guy always gets. That's always the new guy. So just take it. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we can come back to that. So let's get back to your question.
Like USB thumb drives back then? What were you doing? A little Windows? It's all Windows backups, right? It's all Windows server backups. Okay.
Oh, man. I don't know if I should say this. Maybe the people at Microsoft are listening, but I'm still not sure that I managed all those tapes properly.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's tapes with barcodes and stuff.
I'll admit, I would forget. I don't think they're company anymore. I didn't. Boxes would show up. They'd be like, "Here's your tapes back." I'm like, "Something needs to be off-site. These didn't work. Just take that one back." I'll admit it. I was like, I don't know what else to do.
Leave it in.
I mean, if you can wait around 5 hours, I'll get a new fridge. We'll get you tomorrow. Anyway.
Yeah. But you asked what scared me. That was one.
Yeah. That's a big leap. The move. Yeah.
Worked out though. I think the second thing,
calculated risk, maybe a way to say it, but a risk nonetheless.
The second big move that I made that scared the crap out of me, very relevant to your podcast, I think, because it's how I became an SE.
Yeah.
So I'm working at Microsoft now. Fast forward a couple years, I had managed to become the primary engineer responsible for storage. There's common thread there.
Yeah.
I had a couple of petabytes that I managed, which today, we can do that.
A big number.
It's nothing, right?
Like
but
early mid-aughts, huh?
Back then, that was multiple racks of gear spread across multiple labs and multiple buildings. It was quite a bit of storage.
What was the size of each hard drive? That had to be huge.
And some that were like 36 gigs, 72
probably
gigs.
Getting up there. Yeah, still, it's a lot of disk. Like that. A lot of disk.
Yeah,
we don't do disk anymore, but yeah.
But so I managed a lot of storage, and through the course of that part of my career, I got to know all of the sales teams for the vendors that I had in my labs.
Right.
So
right.
I really got to know those folks. They were good at their job, and so they were keeping touch points with me and making sure that I had what I needed to be successful using their products. And ultimately I would, tell the organization to buy more of their products.
Maybe taking you to lunch. Not that that's
taking, lunches, all that kind of good stuff. And the sales engineer I worked with took a different role, which made an opening for the sales engineer for the storage company. I'll go ahead and name the name because we're talking about my career. Zyotech was a storage vendor that I used. And the sales engineer who worked solely dedicated to Microsoft moved to another team, which had an opening there, and recommended me to fill that role. And
awesome.
I'm kind of known as being a little bit obnoxious, maybe outgoing, talkative, chatty, confident. That wasn't the case pre-becoming an SE.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I'm going to talk about this because I think this is really relevant to JD. Your listeners. Is I was absolutely scared to death to become an SE. But
did you ever think about I would like to be an SE before that moment?
No.
Or did that was like, here's a thought about this. Here's an opportunity
that it presented itself.
So it wasn't something you were.
And I thought about it and I said, wow, this is an opportunity to do a lot of things that I think I would like to do. Travel a little bit, get to work on a diverse set of opportunities. One of the things I love the most about sales is every week new project.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to, I was enjoying what I was doing at Microsoft, but it was a lot of the same stuff over and over and over again.
Yeah, owning the network it's within those walls.
Yeah, sales engineer,
those racks.
You get to work with somebody on a project, deliver the project, and then move on and go find the next area where you can be impactful. So there were a lot of things, that were really fun, but I was scared to death to get up in front of a large audience, especially at Microsoft, my only customer, Microsoft, very, very,
Company you're
very
familiar
smart
with.
people.
Company you're even familiar with, right? You still have that fear. Yeah.
Incredibly smart people. Get up in front of them and talk about, something, knowing that I was not the smartest person in the room.
Now, that's an important, I believe that's actually a good skill to know you're not the most important person in the world, because it gives you some humility. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
derail you there, but
exactly
that's
right.
not necessarily a bad thing. But I get, the fear though before you really get through that is it can be overwhelming. Sure,
probably at least for the first 6 months that I was an SE.
Yeah,
every time I had to present, I got sick to my stomach, like just terrified.
Yeah.
But I powered through, and I kind of you build those skills. You don't just have them.
Yeah.
Built that skill. I did the thing that was scary. I went out there, built my knowledge that I'd be more comfortable presenting. And, you do it a few times and you find out, you know what? At the end of this meeting, the world's going to keep spinning.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on to the next opportunity. People are going to ask some questions. I'm going to know the answer to some of them. I'm not going to know the answer to some of them. That's okay.
Next time you're going to know that answer. And
exactly. And so
they're only retaining some parts of it anyway. And
yeah. So there was an extreme period of nervousness for me, but I stuck with it. And now, as I look back, it is one of, after meeting and marrying Angela.
Yes, that is established.
One of the best things that I ever did in my career was to say yes to that opportunity and go do the scary thing, which comes back around to your question.
Did you ever? I had this when I first got in, and people would ask me, well, how's your job? I'm like, you know what? Even when I have I'm going to say a tough day, but you have those days where I didn't know a thing. That meeting could have gone better. I still look back on what I did before, and I was like, yeah, this is 100% more what I'd rather do. So, I wouldn't say the best day here is better than or worst day here is better than the best day there, but this is propelling me towards the thing that I really like to do, so it's worth it, right?
And I'll tell you a little secret. You're never going to 100% get past that. What I mean is, even today, I'm 5-6 jobs in principal technology.
What are you, 9 years, 10 years in the industry?
I can think of, even less than a year ago, maybe about a year ago, a meeting that I took where I presented for Pure in this role, and I bombed it. I had a bunch of technology issues. I couldn't get into the meeting. I was late. My computer was acting up. I didn't have a good grasp of what I was expected to deliver on the call. Yeah. So I prepared the wrong thing. I was so shooken up by all the technology issues and the fact that my presentation wasn't aligned, that then I was nervous and I gave bad delivery. Why do I tell you that? To remind you it's okay. Yeah. And even folks who have come as far as we have in this job, in this role, still have bad days, and that's okay. Yeah, that's okay.
I think that having a grasp of what you're supposed to deliver, maybe that's more important now. When you're kind of used to at VMOS there 5.5 years, I'm like, I know what they want me to say. Yeah. But that's a big thing. But it's going to happen, and it's going to be almost take you back to those beginnings. Like, oh yeah, I remember stumbling through this, and I'm going to get better. Yeah.
That's a great story. It actually goes back to a comment you made, way towards the beginning. You said be open to opportunities that even you're not looking for. And I was going to say at the time, I've never regretted stepping out of my comfort zone and doing something that I thought that I would be scared of, but I have regretted not stepping out of my comfort zone and gone, well, what could have been, because the best things in my career happened when I, like you said, it was scary, but I took that job or took the opportunity, and that's how you learn and grow.
Yeah.
So
modify the plan. I like that. I tend to set, I've told you guys this 1,000 times probably, but I tend to set these goals. Like, I want to be this, but don't be afraid to deviate along the path, because it's going to make you take the actions to get to the place you want to get to anyway, even though you might not make that ultimate goal, but you got to have a plan, a direction. To your point. Yeah.
Now there's something that's equally as important that goes along with being open to opportunities. The other side of that coin is making sure to put yourself in lots of situations where you are likely to be presented opportunities.
There you go.
Right?
That's
So
the plan you should have. Is
Say,
put yourself there.
say yes
Yeah.
to the networking opportunity.
Yeah.
Go to that community event. Go say hello to the person that just delivered that presentation that you watched, that you enjoyed. It's you have to have the mindset and the preparedness to recognize and accept the opportunity when it's presented. But you also have to put yourself in a situation where you're more likely to be presented with those opportunities, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the two things go together.
Yeah.
Those opportunities aren't going to come to your house necessarily. Well, maybe on Zoom they are, but without you logging into that Zoom, they're not coming to your house.
That's great, because that seems to be a reoccurring theme on this podcast, right? Just say yes.
Yeah.
Take opportunities, right? I like, JD, what you just said, though. It seems like on previous episodes, while that's been a reoccurring theme, it's always been about, I'm in IT, I'm going to say yes to the next job or taking on additional duties as assigned.
Yeah.
Right. But you just took it beyond that even.
Yeah.
Right. Like, go say hi to that presenter. Go talk to people you're not even familiar with. Right. Say yes to doing something with them. So that's awesome. I like how you broadened that thought.
Yeah. Now, I know this is the SE journey, and your focus is people coming into this role, but I'd like to take just a minute, if you'll give me the leeway, and I would like to talk a little bit about what I think folks who are kind of further down the journey.
I think the SE journey doesn't end, man.
So
I think that's the kind of the point. You have this role, and you've had all sort of roles. So yeah.
So if you're young in this journey, if you're early in this journey, all of those things I just said. If you're further along in this journey, like the three of us are, if you're more mature in the role and you've been presented those opportunities and your career has benefited from them, one of the things that I try to do, I think I could do a lot better, and I want to do a lot better.
Sure.
But one of the things that I want to do is I want to take that experience and try to bring it to folks who are starting out who don't have the same opportunities. Because what I just told you a minute ago was put yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
There are certain people who, through the nature of their upbringing, how much money they have, their ethnicity, where they grew up, all of these different characteristics may not have had as many opportunities put in front of them as, a white dude like me has.
Right.
And so I think it's on us to recognize that first and to take action by going to seek out folks who may be really great for our SE community, but don't have those opportunities, and help them find those opportunities. Invite them to the networking event that you're going to. Invite them to a panel that people that you might be on, right? Insisting that when you're invited to a panel, that it is a panel that has diverse speakers. If I'm going to participate, I want to make sure that there is a diversity of speakers with me, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that they have that opportunity. Those are the kind of things we can do to broaden.
And those are really better panels anyway, right?
Yeah.
That's different points
Different
of view
perspectives.
that actually make it a lot better.
So I think that's a way we can.
It's really about that.
We can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So shout out to those listening that are actually doing this. Hey, this is how we can give back in a really
mentoring,
proper way. Yeah.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, and that's some of what this podcast is meant to be. And I think you just said it great. So, and we're all here too, right? Mm-hmm. So if anybody's out there going, hey, I wonder if this would be right, or I need someone in the industry to talk to, reach out to us. That's what we're here for.
And podcast really, in my mind, just to kind of go back in that. So that's why that's great. Is I don't think we know how you get to this SE journey. We got here, and we're trying to examine these little things like, hey, how'd you get here? What are the things that got you? And we can definitely share a lot, but it's through the telling these stories and then going out and reaching out to those that don't have the opportunities or want to get into, and having to externalize and tell them like, oh, well, this is how I got here. And really, truly, I mean, I take that back to when I used to teach college. I liked it because I had to understand the subject in a way to convey it, which means I fully understand it too. So, it's a two-way thing. You're really earning. I mean, it's one of the biggest things you can do, right? To mentor. So I think, or maybe I just wanted it and I didn't have it early in my career. I want to make sure others have it. I don't know.
That the learn, do, teach.
Learn to teach. There you go.
Method has always worked very well for me. I think you, when you have to teach somebody else, you really internalize. Okay, what is happening, and what do I have to,
And it goes back to not being scared and having those meetings, because I might make that delivery. Be like, well, why didn't that land? Oh, I can make this a little smoother. I can take that part out. That just takes them down a road they don't need to understand. So yeah.
All right.
It's definitely a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that got us to Zyotech, got you through the storage. I guess storage kind of was all the same, or not all the same, but it was that same journey. And then, okay, did we cover your entire?
I mean,
the relevant points.
Zyotech, storage startups are fun.
That's a good one. Yeah, if you want to give it a second on startups, I've never been in a startup. Chris, I don't believe you've ever been in a startup. So
no,
I worked
not
in
unless
all the places you did. So
not unless you consider state government a startup.
Well, maybe it acts like one. Any preference? Yeah, that would actually probably be a good little perspective. We haven't had that yet.
Preference on startup versus big company?
Do you like them? Do you not like them? What are they about? Are they a young man's game? That kind of thing. Whatever.
I mean, very different, right? And I've kind of run the gambit. I've worked for a couple startups. I've worked for some of the largest companies in the world, Microsoft.
Yep.
They bring different things to the table, right? Microsoft, tremendous stability, tons of benefits.
Yeah.
Lots of opportunity to make lateral moves to the organization and try different career paths, try different, kind of things. Probably the most important thing, I don't know if my mom will listen to this, but probably the most important thing is when I'm making a joke. But, when I moved to Seattle and I got the job at Microsoft, my mom was so proud. She could tell her friend, my son works at Microsoft, and everybody knew who that was.
Yeah, every time they picked up a XP box, they're like, oh, he does this.
And so then I went to work for a startup that almost nobody had heard of. So my mom had to say, hey, my son used to work at Microsoft.
So what happened?
So there's that. It's that brand recognition, so your parents can be really proud of you.
That's funny. I've had many conversations when I changed jobs. When I came to Pierre, I'm like, do you know what I do, Mom? Because I'm, 40-year-old man, and I'm like, do you know what your son does? I think I do. And I'm like, all right, well,
fix computers, right?
That's exactly what I think my kids think I do. Anyway, but they're proud of us anyway.
Yeah. So
like, I don't know, you can afford your house, you're not asking me for money? Cool.
So the big company, lots of advantages there. I will say that it's a lot harder in a big company to stand out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certainly opportunities to do that, but it's harder, right?
Small fish, big pond.
Yeah.
Big fish, really big pond, whatever.
Let's see. When I started, why can't I think of his name? I'm having one of those moments. You'll edit this out, right? Founder of Microsoft.
So Palmer?
No.
Bill Gates himself?
Bill Gates. Thank you. Sorry.
Co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation?
I was having a moment there. I started when Bill was CEO. Eventually, Ballmer became CEO.
Yeah.
Never knew my name.
Sure.
Promise neither of those individuals have any idea who JD Wallace is.
Yeah, every time you met him, you gave him a different name.
I did. I never met Bill. Actually, I never met either of them, but I did. One day I was going to get my morning Starbucks, and I saw Ballmer coming out of the Starbucks. I didn't introduce myself. I let that opportunity pass me by.
Did you? Intentionally.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of the downfall of a large company.
Yeah. Okay.
You have it's harder to be globally impactful. Let's say that
if we want to do that. Okay.
Yeah. Small
stability, but global compact. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Small company. Every startup that I've worked for, first name basis with CEO.
Yeah.
Everybody knows who
you might even just have a first name email because there's not enough people there. Right. Yeah.
You have, the risk is small companies, startups could go out of business at any point. Yeah. So there's definitely less stability.
Yeah.
Generally fewer benefits. If, there is upside if the company blows up, gets big.
Yep.
You certainly a lot of times have the opportunity to share in that equity, and so that can be a big benefit, but those are few and far between, right?
Yeah, that's not. Yeah.
But I think the most value that I got out of working for a startup was the ability to be impactful. There's fewer people there. There's a lot of jobs that need to be done. And if you're willing to go out, find something that needs to be done and do it, there's a lot of opportunity for you to build your personal brand, to build your resume, your career, all of those kind of
skill
things.
set. Yeah. Let's define roles is what I always figured, right? It's like you might have to do a myriad of things. Maybe it's like the technical role, but you might be marketing as well as the SE, right? And you might even be supporting people, right? Depending on what the company looks like. A lot more work, a lot more upside. Yeah, so that's really what you want to do. Okay. I think that's a good perspective for those that don't know. Again, I have never worked at a startup. Neither has Chris, except for the government apparently. And
I've never gotten rich working at a startup, so how about that?
There is those. You hear those stories. So I'm not going to compare like a big company, small company, like the major leagues. But, only the small percentages get in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
Most people, don't. So, you're going to.
I did work at a .com that was like just came out, the .com area.
There you go.
But I wouldn't really call it a startup. I mean,
It's a bubble.
it was a bubble. It came and went, right? And it was like, it was
.com is an internet site for those that are younger, maybe, but
Web 1.0.
a Web 1.0 company.
The .com bubble, yeah. So, but it was so small. It wasn't. We were doing digital media
small
stuff.
company feel.
And there was like 6 of us total that actually did
all the jobs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and programming and digital editing, and then you had a few leaders.
Yeah. Interesting perspective. I've worked for big companies, small companies, you never startup. Okay, well, that's a good perspective. I like that. Yeah, kind of rounded out there. Anything else to add on that before I ask you this question I usually ask, which Chris might be right, I might not remember.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You want to share with the group? I mean, it's really more about sharing your story and what you think's helpful, or
I mean, I think you've been great about pointing out what would be good to the listeners. But if there's anything else you're thinking of, or any more of the journey,
I can talk all day. I think trying to bring it back to someone who may be considering or trying to get into this career. One of the things that I'll point out, I'm not sure if any of your previous guests have done this, but you will, in almost all certainty, work very closely with an account rep. And they have a lot of names too: account rep, account executive, AE,
territory manager, whatever they are.
Lots of different names.
The sales guy, person.
The thing that I will prepare you for is that is a very, very, very close partnership.
Yep.
You will work more closely with that person than you have worked with anybody in your career. And there's a lot of things that come with that, right? So first of all, as you can imagine, when you're preparing to take a role as an SE, personality fit with the rep that you're going to be working with is something that you should take very seriously in that interview process.
That's a great point.
You should absolutely insist on meeting with that person as part of your interview loops. I would advocate, actually, I'll tell you a story. So when my original rep that I worked with at Zyotech moved on, and we were hiring a new rep to come in, AE, and I actually asked first of all, the hiring manager, the district manager, was kind enough to let me be involved in that process. Ask for that.
Yeah.
If you find yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
Ask to be a part of that process.
Just put yourself in that opportunity. Right?
Yeah. But we were interviewing a few different candidates, and there was one candidate that I really thought would be good, but I didn't know what the personality fit was going to be. And I told the hiring manager this, and I said, you know what I'd like to do, with your permission, I'd like to just invite the guy out for a beer. And I did. And I went, and I drove, I'm in Seattle, drove all the way down to Portland.
Wow.
And I met this candidate for a beer. And we ended up talking for 2 hours, really hit it off. And that ended up, so that guy's name, Chad Cohenson.
Mr. Cohenson.
Go ahead, name drop.
Just text me.
I'm so glad that I spent the time to make sure that was going to be a good personality fit. And it was so good, in fact, that Chad and I actually worked together all the way through the rest of my career until I joined Pure. And at Pure, I'm not paired up with a rep. So, we did eventually kind of go our separate ways in terms of our careers, but still very good friends, still talk regularly. But I can't emphasize enough the importance of making sure that that's a good fit.
Someone told me that a while ago, and I liked it. Like, when you're comparing yourself with a rep, is this the rep you would leave for another company with? Like, you would say one or the other, like, hey, let's go, or they have an opportunity and they want you to go with them. Yeah, is it that team? And even at Pure, the teams we cover, the good ones, a lot of them have been at multiple companies, and it shows. Yeah.
And you're more successful.
And right? I hate to say it's like you gotta like almost court like you're dating, or it's like a marriage, but it's that kind of a straight relationship you gotta have. It's a partnership for sure. Yeah. And if you can't have mutual trust and mutual respect, then
and the stronger
personalities will fit. Yeah.
The stronger that relationship is, I think the more successful you'll be.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's someone you enjoy, going after these opportunities with.
You might be on the road with or travel with.
Well, and you also, I mean, look, with anybody like that you become really good friends with, you spend enough time with them, you kind of develop this sixth sense almost, where, Chad and I would go into first calls, first call, new customer, never talked to before, no idea what kind of personality we're getting involved with. And without having a direct conversation, he and I could pick up on the customer's personality, know pretty quickly which of the two of us that customer was more likely to relate to.
One steps up, the other fades out.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And dynamically in the meeting, for example, let's say, somebody who was super into, Lego and Star Wars and nerdy stuff like that and brewing beer, I would kind of step forward and that, I'd kind of lead the conversation, and Chad would kind of play a supplementary role. Well, not supplementary, but a support role, right? Conversely, someone who's super into sports and, had a kid his age and all those other things, into music. Chad was really, really into, is really, really into music. And so, some customers just naturally gravitated towards one or the other personality, and we didn't lock ourselves into
I do this, you do that.
I'm the AE, I always take this role. You're the SE, you always take this role. We allowed ourselves to kind of dynamically shift who led an opportunity based on who had the best relationship.
By reading the room.
And you develop that.
People buy from people, right? Yeah. I mean, they want to work with people that they like. So that's great. Oh, that's great advice. Sales one, we haven't actually explored that yet.
I was going to say that's great because in IT, I mean, I never wanted to be in sales and didn't know what the engineering side of sales was. So I never thought about, when I was starting to come in here, what you just explained, right? Like, you're going to have a relationship closer than a work relationship than you probably ever have.
Some weeks I saw Chad more than my wife.
Yeah.
And it's not a huge team, right? In IT and IT shops, I had teams and groups. We worked really close, but this is much more just a
kind of
one-on-one relationship.
Yep. Well, that's a
great point.
That's a great point. Yeah. Relationship with your AE. Okay.
I feel like I didn't come up with any fun stories.
We could tell a fun story. Well, so the question I usually ask everybody when I get into that, it's usually, I have two. Maybe Chris can remember my other one because there was an out question. I think it's supposed to be your best. We usually tie this to IT. Usually by this point we're talking about the IT in the career, so like kind of your best moment. But I like to ask what you think your worst moment, your biggest mistake, be it an outage, your biggest flunder. It could just be your best story in IT.
Did you ever trip over a power whip and take out that one rack data center?
Yeah. I mean, we've had people update, update a UCS, maybe that was yours. Update a config file that just took everything offline.
Like at any point in my career or specifically as an SC?
Just any point. Usually ends up being in the IT realm, but usually drags out an interesting story, so it's giving you just a chance to tell yours.
Oh, worst.
I think, humility, they're the funnest.
I don't know. I don't know if this is cheating, but I can tell you a story about somebody else.
Yeah.
Probably cheating. It's funny though. So
Should just owned it, man. There's a tip for you. If you're an SE, borrow stories, make them your own.
oh yeah.
So that's what JD's going to demonstrate.
This is how you borrow a story when you can't think of one. So this is when I was working at Microsoft, and the way the buildings we were in were laid out is they were mainly office buildings, right? And so big building all around the edges where the windows were, you had offices because you want to put the people next to the windows.
Yeah.
But then in the interior of the building, we would put labs. And what I mean by lab is a data center, a non-production data center. So we had these labs for a variety of things, building software, testing things, all kinds of fun stuff. And we were in, I can't remember, the building was maybe 5 or 6 stories tall, and these labs were stacked on top of each other. So every floor had a lab.
Yeah.
Now, when you went into a lab, there, right next to the door, was a huge EPO button.
Mm.
The big red button behind the plastic shield, the emergency power off button. I guess the funny thing was I was never actually trained on this button.
Like, why?
I knew it was there. I mean, it was
when
obvious.
I hit this?
You couldn't miss it. But
what is the purpose of hitting it? If that thing starts on fire, we can show you all that.
I guess the idea,
malware attack.
I think the idea was, something bad's happening. Something, we cut the power, and there we go.
That bad thing stops. Okay.
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
I never pushed the button, so there you go.
Right.
So we had one of these in every lab.
The shiny red button.
You see where this is going.
Yeah.
So one time we were moving a lab. So we had to shut down everything in this one lab because it was all going to another building. And it was me and another technician that I was working with. And we were done. We had everything shut down. And the other tech, I'm not going to name names here.
The other tech.
I should own this one. So the other tech says, "Hey JD, you ever wonder what happens when you hit that button?"
Oh God.
I was like, "Yeah."
Sheer curiosity.
You say yeah.
Yeah, I did.
It was the you see that Ren and Stimpy episode, the shiny red button. Is that just me? Anyway.
We had already shut everything down in the lab, right?
Oh, you're like, what's the word?
I mean, what's the thing? What's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So he flips the plastic cover.
Like a
Whoop.
delivery. Mm-hmm.
And then boop, hits that red button, and it, doesn't really do anything because the lab's already off. Then the cell phone starts ringing.
Because you're on floor whatever, right?
Yeah, we're on like 3rd floor.
Yeah.
What we soon discovered was that button was not connected to the lab we were in. That button was actually connected all the way at the ground floor of the building to the main power trunk that was supplying the entire stack of labs.
Yeah.
So by hitting that button,
he
did not shut the power off to that lab. He shut the power off to every lab.
So whatever was plugged into that.
Woo! So there you go. So
that was an intentional button push. That's awesome.
That's actually a great story.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, it is. It could be yours. You were there with them. If you weren't, you weren't. That's fine. But that's hilarious. That own weather reminds me of I used to stand in front of every time we'd have a raid failure back when I had to worry about that. Me and the other guy would go like, so we should be able to pull that drive, right? Because it's
the one with the blinky light.
Yeah, and like we'd keep all our data, right? Because we still have it's only one.
We got raid. It's fine.
It's like you do it. It's fine. Oh, you do it. And we'd have to talk ourselves down. Well, we're already in this predicament, so we're here. We got to do it right, and then you'd be fine. But I remember both of us would be like, "Yeah, that's what I read," and I've done it before and it works, but I don't know, man. Because I've also been standing in that same time and watched Amber Light, second Amber Light, and you're like, "Oh, that raid's gone," and that's why I hate Raid 5. So I have done that too. I work for newspapers, by the way. They run stuff until you have to hit the shiny red button to make it stop burning or whatever. That's how they pull right into the ground. That's hilarious.
So now that we're talking about power off, I've got more stories. You can edit these out if you don't care about them.
Yeah.
But we had, and I'm not going to name names on brand here, but we had some really, really old storage in some of these labs. And whenever we had a planned power outage, we actually, whenever we'd come back on, if it was wintertime, these old storage arrays wouldn't boot back up properly if they were too cold. So we actually had to let the temperature come up in the building or in the lab. We had to turn other stuff on to start generating. Let the temperature come up in the lab before we could turn on these really old storage arrays, because they wouldn't come up if they were too cold. That was fun.
Really?
And then let's see here.
We had days at the newspaper. There was the tandem. That thing could run if it was 90 degrees in there, 100 degrees. But occasionally, first of all, this room had a balcony and a door to the balcony. Went off the outside. Don't ask why. In the desert, they had a tint on the windows to keep the heat out. But anyway, it would get hot. We'd lose our air conditioning, and you'd have two doors open and a big giant fan would get rolled in by the building guy, and we'd just be pushing air out. And I'm like, that's how we're gonna run this data center. I'm like, what? Anyway, so I've seen worse.
I got another one. So I never did a ton with networking, but obviously FC switches were part of managing storage, and so we had expanded some storage earlier in the year. Added some new hardware, which required us to use some additional ports on the switch, and it was actually the vendor technician was responsible for expanding the ports. And so they had come in and they had licensed and activated these switches, the ports on the switch, forgot to save that running configuration to the boot up configuration. So then one weekend...
Forgot to write WR. Yeah.
So then one weekend, the power went out. No problem. Everything booted back up.
Yeah.
Half the storage didn't come back online.
Sure.
And it became this huge emergency. And I basically came in. I was like, oh, it's because half the ports aren't on.
Yeah.
Brought them back on, and that was it.
Yes.
You cut that one. That wasn't a very interesting story.
No, I think I've been there. Oh, I forgot to write WR. That's when you learn that text files are backup files for switches. That's what I did, at least. Anyway.
I had that exact same realization. Like, oh, we just keep all this in a text file.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which, I don't know. That's probably not secure, but it's just figs. But, yeah.
Definitely not secure when your passwords are open text in that text file.
Maybe don't do that. Yeah. Open text passwords. Hey, that was back in the day when I was writing batch scripts for everything. So
I have one question for you, going back. And it's already been proven I'm not listening very well. So you may have already said this.
You should get more interesting guests.
You mentioned... No, dude, you've been absolutely fantastic. You mentioned meeting, you were working at Microsoft and meeting the salespeople, and then kind of, you ended up moving into a role. Mm-hmm. Was that the first time you realized what sales engineering was?
I mean, or
did you know?
I certainly knew what the sales engineer who supported me did.
Okay.
I maybe didn't know a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, right? Yeah. But I knew the persona that they presented to the customer. I was the customer.
Okay, so you had worked with.
I would say, yeah, there were definitely things that I knew, and then things that I learned. So.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I just think it's interesting when we all figured out, what the heck this side of the role really meant, and I think we talk about that a lot. Now I'm very happy for the what got me here and all the stuff I know. I bring a lot of experience from being in IT for so many years. There's some of you going, man, I wonder if I'd have found this 15 years earlier.
Yeah,
right?
What two houses
be different. But so yeah, it's just interesting to me, and that's why for me it's really kind of a thing I want to get the message out there that this is this role, and here's why it might be fun for you. So.
And don't be afraid to do the stuff that scares you and put yourself in those opportunities. I think that's a great roundabout. That's kind of a common theme that we've seen throughout.
Another lesson, since we're talking about lessons, is when you get into that role, and this actually probably applies to things other than sales engineering, but when you get into that role, this is something I had to learn very early on. I'll tell you a story of not long after I became an SE, I had a meeting with a customer, and I show up, and there's a lot of people in the room. We're in a conference room. A lot of people are there. Everyone starts to kind of sit down around the table, and the chairs start to fill up. And I'm like, well, I'm new.
Yep.
So I'm going to go sit over here in this chair by the window instead of sitting at the table. And the meeting went on, and it was done. And then we got out, and the sales rep didn't say anything during the meeting, but afterwards approached me and said, look, however you feel, your job is to be a technical leader. You always have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And that was a really important lesson that I learned early on. When you walk into that room as the sales engineer, you are the technical leader. You may have other resources that you've brought in. You may have called the CTO in.
Yeah.
Other resources to help you out. You are the technical owner representing your product, company, whatever. You always have a seat at that table. Make sure that you aren't sitting over by the window.
No, that's a good point. Even as we've gotten these roles, maybe even your roles. Well, Chris, we're more. That team still owns that relationship. So absolutely, that SE and that even that salesperson have that seat. We're there to kind of even facilitate things for them. So that's a good one as well. If you could just cut these up, we just have like nuggets of 15 recommendations by JD or whatever.
Write a book.
Write a book. All right. Well, that's been great, I think. I don't know. We can probably end it there. We can save it for the next time. I mean, of course, I'll give you the numbers, and you let me know, your agent know if you want to come back. But we appreciate time. As always, great to hang out with you. I think we've done a lot of that this week, but thanks for doing this. And
is it Scotch 30 now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Try office.
So thank you, JD, for joining us. I mean, it was fantastic.
Hey, thanks for having me. I love what you guys are doing here. Right? There is a lot of mystery around becoming an SE, just because it's such a small community. There aren't a ton of us, right? And so there's a lot of mystery, and I love that you guys are dedicating time to kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit and kind of showing people what it's all about, maybe getting some more people interested.
That's key.
Think back to, what I said about, diversifying that pipeline of new SE candidates. One of the best ways we can do that is communicate and be transparent about what it is. Tell people about those opportunities. And so I absolutely appreciate what you guys are doing for our community. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And thank you for inviting me to share a couple stories.
It doesn't work if we don't get guests like you on the show. So we appreciate it as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
But
thank you, Zane. And then thank you for everyone that stuck with us this time. Hopefully that was enjoyable. I found it enjoyable, whether I was listening or not.
Yeah.
So, no,
it's really just an excuse for us to hang out and hopefully somebody else listens.
When I asked if there'd be a test earlier, it was really a test for Chris.
Yes. He goes, yes, there will be. And I will fail.
No, thank you all again for sticking with us, and we'll catch you next time on the SE Journey. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. And that's that. Woo-hoo. That was good. I think we went on too.
I didn't tell my